Hi, I'm Claudette with They Call Me Martha, and I'm back with another video. Today I'll be working with the watering can die set, as well as the sentiment stamps and dies from Hero Arts to create a super cute dimensional card. To start this project, let me show you the products that we're going to be using today. This is the watering can die by Hero Arts. It includes the leaves and the flowers, and let me give you the measurement of it. It's at its widest point, it's about 3.5 and about 2 3/4 tall. So it's a nice size for an A2 card. And then we're also going to use these clear sentiment strip stamps by Hero Arts and the corresponding strip dies. What's really great about this stamp is this is one stamp. You get all of these sentiments all in one pass, and then you run it through your die cut machine and you end up with like 40 sentiments all at once. So it's a good set to have, very versatile. Okay, with the die, I want to start by showing you a couple of different ways that you can do this project. You can cut it out of just white cardstock, you can cut it out of watercolored cardstock, and here I've done a couple of colored cardstocks just to show you that you can keep this really simple. You can also spend extra time and work on the distressing and make it look really spectacular, but if you want to keep it simple, you can cut it out of like a gray cardstock, or in this case, this is a patterned paper that is by Craft Consortium. This one's the Patina stack. And in this stack, you find all of these really beautiful patterns already done for you. So it's kind of a nice shortcut if you're looking for an alternative with patterned paper. All right, I'm gonna start by doing a bunch of die cutting. I'm gonna cut out my watering can, several of the leaves and the flowers as well. And then I will show you different ways of coloring all of these, and then we'll put together the card when we're all finished. All right, so I have all of my die cuts made, and I did one watering can and then several passes of the flowers and the leaves because I like to have extra. You're doing the work now, so if you want to throw in a few extra flowers or leaves, you can save them for another card, or you can do multiple cards at once. So I'm going to show you how I color my watering can, and let me show you a couple of examples of what they end up looking like. And what's fun about this is every one that you do ends up looking a little bit different, right? So depending on how much ink you use or where you put the ink or what combination of colors, you're going to end up with a different look. So as you can see, this one is more of the green patina, and this one's a little bit more of the orange kind of rusty colors. In this case, these are both watercolor papers that I used, but you can use regular cardstock as well. And I'll show you how I color these out. Now, I was inspired recently by a video I saw posted by Dawn at W+9, and she was coloring Spellbinder's new, I think it's like a barrel, a wine barrel, and she used a really fun combination of distress products. I believe they were sprays, however. I'm going to be using a combination of Distress Oxide inks and regular distress inks. I'm going to start by laying down some speckled egg, and I want this to be kind of more of the pronounced color, and then just a tiny bit of Salvaged Patina. And then I'm going to spray this with a little bit of water so that we can get some blending and some movement, and then literally just going to dab it into the ink. And then I want to dry it in between so that I can start to layer the colors. So I'm going to heat set this and then keep layering. Okay, now I'm going to come back in and add another layer and pick up some more of that ink. And I'm really just looking for a base color of like a patinaed green. And then I'm going to add some kind of more brown colors to distress it. Okay, let me go ahead and dry this, and I'll do one more pass of the ink. Okay, I think I have enough of a base color on this. Let me go ahead and clean up this ink, and then we'll start with the distressing. All right, my base layer is nice and dry, And now I'm going to start using some regular distress inks, not the oxides, but just the regular ones. And I'm starting with Antique Linen, and I'm just going to start working my way around the edge just to add a little bit of color and also kind of a little bit of that age. You want this to look like it's been sitting out in the yard for a long time. Okay, I think that's good for the first color. And then I'm going to bring in, I think, a little bit of, this is Gathered Twigs, which is just a little bit of a darker brown. And I'm going to repeat that process. I don't want to add a ton of color here. I'm just looking to add a little bit of a distressed edge all the way around. And let me bring my finished sample back in and just show you really quick. This area here in the middle, I want to end up having kind of a highlight or a lighter tone than the edges. It helps make the can look round. And so when you're adding your color, kind of keep that in mind, that I want this center section to have a little bit of that highlight. But just keep that in mind as you're kind of working your way around, that you don't want to drag this distress color over the middle of the watering can. All right, so that was Gathered Twigs. And then I'm going to add a little bit of, I think I'm going to go to Walnut Stain. And again, I'm just building those layers of color. And now I'm kind of starting to flick it a little bit to the middle, right, on either side, keeping this highlight in mind. And I'm just using a regular blending brush. You could also use like a foam applicator to help you ink up the edges. I just like the blending brushes best. I think I have the most control with them. Okay, I'm continuing to work that color across the middle. Okay, and then I'm gonna move to, I think I'm gonna bring out my Rusty Hinge, which gives it that beautiful aged look. But before I go there, I think I want to add a little bit more, I think, of the Gathered Twigs. And kind of pull that ink into the middle as well. And remember, I'm keeping this center section without the distress ink. I'm trying to highlight it so that it looks curved. Okay, now I think we can add the Rusty Hinge. And I have always used like a, I think this is a stencil brush. It's really old. It's got a bunch of different uneven bristles here. And so if you just blot it in the ink and then pounce it on the image, you'll get kind of that random patterning. So this is one way to do it. But as I mentioned earlier, when I was watching Dawn from W+9, she used a sea sponge, which I happen to have in my stash and I hadn't used it in years. So I thought I would bring it out and try it. And so I just want to show you kind of the different look that you get. So again, this is kind of that stippled look that you get from the stenciling brush. I'm just going to turn this around a little bit. And now I've added that ink to the sea sponge and you get a little bit more of kind of a splattered look. And I actually end up liking the combination of the two. So the stippling or stencil brush and the sea sponge. You don't want to go crazy with the orange because it will overpower the whole thing. Just enough to add a little bit of that texture. And you can see, let me bring in my two examples here. Look how different they are. I've really used the same colors. It's just maybe I used more of one color than the other in the different examples. All right, so now once we have our base, I'm going to show you how I kind of add a little bit of detail. So I'm going to show you this little piece right here. So there's like a little metal band here on the bottom, and one that's really hard to see right around the top of the pouring spout. And Hero Arts does a really good job with their dies in that they're actually split. So you can literally put a piece of paper underneath and kind of do a little bit of masking, I guess, of just this piece. And so I'm just taking a little piece of scratch paper and I'm gonna come back in with the gathered twigs. And this allows me to add ink to just that strip and not add color underneath. So I'm adding a little bit of that kind of aged look to the metal strip that's different than the base of the watering can. So you can see how I got that little bit of highlight there. And I'm going to do the same thing along the bottom. So again, now you can see that the rim on the bottom is a little darker. And then if you wanted to, you could even do this top piece. It's really hard to get at though, but it is there. You can see it when you cut the die out, which is kind of cool. All right, so that is our watering can. The next thing we're gonna do is color our leaves and flowers. And I have a couple of tips for you on, let's start with the leaves. So I cut a bunch of white ones here, and I wanna show you two different ways you can do your leaves. So I've cut them just out of the same white cardstock that I cut my watering can out of. And then I also cut some out of green cardstock. Now, if you just do the green cardstock, you can be done. It looks great just as it is, but you can also kind of add some dimension to even the colored cardstock by just using an alcohol marker to add a little bit of that shading. And it makes a world of difference just again on colored cardstock. Or if you're starting from white, what I like to do is start with a lighter alcohol marker. And actually you could probably even use just a regular marker. Doesn't necessarily have to be an alcohol marker. But I'm just gonna lay that foundation of color down and then I'm gonna blend in some darker color. Now I ended up using, I would say about 8 leaves on my card. Let me just pull in my example here and show you. So you can see I used quite a bit of leaves and I kind of layered them in the back. So I'm going to do several here. Now I'm going to come in with a little bit of a darker color and just add a little bit of that dimension. And I will say that I find that the Copic markers dry back a little bit, so it will end up lighter than kind of what we're looking at here on camera. And then I'm also going to do that lighter color just across the colored cardstock as well, just to kind of blend out that color. Okay, I'm gonna do a bunch more leaves and I'll be right back. Okay, I finished coloring all of my green leaves, and because this is alcohol ink on my mat, I'm going to pick it up just by spraying some alcohol and using a baby wipe, and it comes right off. All right, so now I want to move on to my flowers. I'm just going to bring in several of the flowers, and the die cuts out 2 different shapes. They're very similar, but one is a little wider than the other, and I want to make sure I have like 4 or 5 of each size. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do the flowers. I like to use Copic markers, and so I'm going to use the same 2 greens that we used before for our leaves, and I'm just going to color the stems. So I'm starting with the lighter color, and then I'm going to give a little bit of that depth and dimension with the darker color. And now I'm moving to my darker color, and I'm starting right where the flower kind of starts at the stem. And I'm just dragging down that darker color just to add, just again, a little bit of dimension there. Okay, and now for my flowers themselves. I like to use 3 colors. This is my favorite combination for pink. I'm using R81, R85, and R89. I'm going to start with the lightest color. I'm going to start with at the base of the flower and just flick up. And I'm going to work 4 at a time so that my ink doesn't completely dry and I won't be able to blend them. And then I'm going to go to the R85, which is the mid-tone, and I'm going to do the same thing but lay down just a couple of flicks of color. And then I'm going to move to my darkest shade, which is R89, and I'm going to put even less. I'm kind of starting just in the middle base of the flower and just flicking up. And then I'm going to repeat that process by working my way backwards. So now I'm in the mid-tone and I'm flicking up. And then I'm going to finish with my lightest color and go over the whole thing. All right, let me finish up the other 4 flowers the same way, and then I'll show you a couple of different ways I like to finish off my flowers. Okay, I'm almost finished with my flowers. These are so easy to color. And I think they end up looking so pretty in the end. All right, I finished up all of our little flowers and cleaned up my mat. And now I want to show you how I kind of finished them off a little bit. And so let me bring in my little example here. And so let me add one of these that we just did. So the first one on my right here, this is the one we just colored, and it's kind of a matte finish. This one in the middle, I've treated just the top with some embossing ink, so like watermark ink or just a regular embossing ink, and then dipped it into clear embossing powder and heat set it, and you end up with that kind of glossy finish. And then here I just added a little bit of stickles to the top of the colored version. So you end up getting a completely different look with all 3. So let me do one of those embossed ones so that you can see how easy it is to do. So I'm bringing in my watermark ink, and I'm just going to press just the top of my flower into my ink pad. And then I'm going to dip it into clear embossing powder and heat set it. And you see how you get that beautiful glossy finish on the top. And it's already dry, so you don't have to worry about it transferring or anything. If you're going to do the stickles, I would wait until the very end, until your card's all finished, and that'll be the last step. All right, let's go ahead and assemble this card. Okay, I have a top folding A2 size card base, and then I have a panel that's been cut down to 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to bring in some Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide. This is my favorite ink to give a highlight of sky. So that's what I'm going to do here in the center of this card panel. So I'm just going to start by working that color around. All right, I think that looks good. All right, now I'm going to start building my arrangement. So I'm going to bring in several of my flowers and my leaves. And what's really nice about this die is that it's cut right here along the top to allow for you to put in the leaves and the flowers, kind of tuck them in. So I'm just going to start by layering in some of my leaves first. And I want to vary the height of my leaves so that I get some added dimension. And then I want to put some leaves behind the handle of the watering can. All right, now I have my leaves in. I can always add more or adjust them if necessary. Now I'm going to start layering in my flowers. So I'm going to bring in my example here just so we can kind of see what we're building. So I used, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I used 8 flowers. And I'm just going to, again, put some behind the handle, some in front, some in back of the leaves, some in front. And I want to have differing heights as I go around, just as if I was building like a real flower arrangement. And if you need to, you can trim off some of these stems so that you don't have so much that you have to tuck in. Because like, for example, I know this one on the left, I want to be a little shorter. And I'm just holding them in the back with my finger while I arrange them, and then I'm gonna glue them in the back. All right, I think I have enough flowers here to work with. And now what I'm gonna do is add a little bit of double-sided adhesive. And then I want to add either some foam tape or pop dots, or in this case, I'm going to use sheet foam to give some added dimension to the watering can. Okay, and I'm going to press those flowers and leaves in there so they don't go anywhere. And then I've also put a little bit of sheet foam here on the spout part of the watering can. All right, so you can see how this card is coming together. I used some really tiny pop dots on the back of some of the flowers, just so that it wasn't so flat. So I'm just going to add a few here and there. All right, now I think I'm going to go ahead and glue everything down. So I'm going to remove the liner on my pop dots and add a little bit of glue to my sheet foam and glue it to my card panel. I went ahead and added the wet glue to my sheet foam, and I added a tiny piece of sheet foam here to the round part of the handle. And now I'm just going to center this on my card panel. So let's go ahead and add this to our card base. I'm just going to use wet glue today. And you should have an even border all the way around with your card panel. Just like that. And now the last part, let's do our sentiment strip. So I'm going to bring in my Misty, and I have some black cardstock. And I'm just going to add a little bit of anti-static powder before I heat emboss. And then I'm going to bring in our stamp. Again, I love that this is one solid stamp. So you're just lining it up once. I'm going to add my Versamark ink to my stamp, and I'll probably have to do this twice. All right, that looks great. Now I'm going to add some Hero Arts white embossing powder. And then before you heat set it, you do want to make sure that you remove any little stray pieces of embossing powder. Even though I used my anti-static powder, I still see a few stray pieces here. All right, let me go ahead and heat set this. All right, I'm just going to line up my die and run this through my die cut machine. I'm going to use several pieces of tape because I want to make sure that this does not shift around. Okay, I'll be right back. I just want to show you how fun this is, how many little sentiment strips you get with this really fun set. I just love these stamps and dies. They're so fun. You get so many sentiments all at once. I love it. Okay, I'm just going to pick the one I want to use today. So I'm just going to cut these apart. And then you can decide if you want like a banner cut on the edge or you want a straight cut. I think I'm going to go with a banner cut. Okay, and then I'm just going to glue my sentiment to the watering can. And because it doesn't extend over the edges very much, I think it should be fine as is. I don't think I need any foam underneath. All right, and then to finish off this card, I'm going to add a few just little colored gems. Okay, and add one more down here. I think we're good to go. As a finishing touch, I added a little bit of stickles to each one of the flower buds. And then this cute little card is all finished. I hope you like the techniques I taught you today using the Hero Arts dies and sentiment stamps. If you liked my card and the ideas that I shared with you today, please do give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you and have a great day.